Hey, welcome to another exciting edition of the Give Me Liberty podcast at the Freedom Center at Liberty University, where we're defending life, liberty, and truth to ensure the foundations of freedom exist for the next generation. How is wokeness impacting justice and the legal system and due process of law? These are important questions. Certainly, we do not have an impartial and fair system if people are being ideologically driven by race politics. And at the end of the day, we need experts to weigh in on this subject and enlighten us as to the history of our legal tradition and why it's so important, which is why we have the infamous civil rights attorney, Leo Terrell, on the Give Me Liberty podcast, starting now. Hey, welcome back to the Give Me Liberty podcast, the Standing for Freedom Center at Liberty University, where we defend life, liberty, and truth to ensure the foundations of freedom exist for the next generation. And I'm joined by a very special guest, someone who needs very little introduction. If you watch Fox News, Fox Nation, you know who he is. All right, this is Leo Terrell, the famous civil rights attorney. And thank you so much for coming to Liberty.
Are you serious? This is my privilege to be here. I've been waiting for 4 months to sit here and face you and talk today.
Well, we're enjoying it. We're honored to have you as a guest. For our students, the Gen Z generation, the generation next, they're beset with all kinds of challenges. I'm very optimistic. I am not a pessimist. I'm an optimist because God's in control. But I do think that there are huge challenges for this next generation. One is looking at the kind of justice system that will exist, if not in the immediate future, in the very near future. It seems like if you look at the kinds of cases that are coming up, we no longer look at justice as blind. We don't look at, if you go to the Supreme Court, it says equal protection under the law. That's a part of our American legal system and our tradition. It should not matter. It doesn't matter irrespective of color, religion, sex, all of those things. It should not matter. You should always have a fair hearing. But it seems like those things, because of cultural Marxism, you think about indoctrination, you think about the quality of education, you think about the new crop of students that are coming up under critical legal theory at Columbia University and Harvard University, all of those things. It's like the American legal system is going to be under threat, is it not?
It's already under threat. It's totally under threat. The legal system has been weaponized. It's been taken over by a particular segment of this country that wants to use it to destroy our institutions. You're right. Liberty, we have the best legal system in the world. We had the best legal system. And for the students at Liberty, they need to understand that they have an obligation to restore that balance for people to get a fair and equal justice under the law. Right now, it's not, because there is an agenda on place to make sure that this system is used for a political purpose, and that is wrong. The legal system has always been and should be an independent organization within our framework of government.
How does that affect, when you think about the legal system, criminal justice, who gets prosecuted, who gets off ultimately? I mean, you see so many stories now of murderers, rapists, there's not even a system. It seems like a process. It's like catch and release. They're back on the streets within days, weeks. It doesn't seem as though there is a true enforcement of the law.
There is absolutely no enforcement of the law. I'm going to be very brutally honest. And the young people who are growing up, who want to start a career and family, they should worry about the quality of the life, because the system doesn't work right now. There are criminals who are being punished and not punished in the sense of committing crimes on the streets and being released the next day. You have soft on crime prosecutors who are releasing criminals every day. Why? Because they claim as their basis that the system is inherently racist, that we have a systemic system of race discrimination. Let me be very clear. 30 years of being a civil rights attorney. There is no systemic racism in this country. We're not living in 1955. We're in 2022. You look at these cities, they're run by left-wing politicians. They run the system. They're running the police system. They're running the criminal justice system. They're the mayors. They're the governor. And that's where crime is rampant.
Yeah.
And it poses a threat to the quality of life. And that needs to stop. What needs to stop? Basically the opening of doors, allowing criminals to roam the streets, terrorizing everyday, average, hardworking Americans.
Okay, so I love what you said. At every level of the governance in many of these cities where crime is rampant, Chicago every weekend, it's like a third world country. There are all kinds of unsolved murders. Police can't even go into neighborhoods to solve these crimes. They don't want to at the risk of or peril of their own lives. But they have, I'm going to use the word hegemonic. It means totality. They have total control of the city at every level of government, all the various agencies. They're all blue, basically. Yes. And so then you say, and this is important to point out, they're claiming systemic racism by who?
Thank you. Where's the boogeyman?
Yeah.
Where's the racist boogeyman? I'll tell you why they play that game. And again, in collusion with them, the left-wing media, the media that basically validates the lie. It's a big lie. Why do they do it? Because the left plays on racial division. The left would not exist without playing what I call the race card. The race card is used when it doesn't exist in these blue cities. And they continue to play this card because without it, they would have no support. They would have no group of people following them. And unfortunately, because of the left-wing media, people drink that Kool-Aid and they believe it. They believe that systemic racism exists in the same towns that are controlled by those people claiming that systemic racism exists. It's ridiculous.
So speaking of systemic racism, going back to another issue, and this is critically important to youngest generation at Liberty, is the issue of abortion. You currently look, this statistic has been true, it's like a perennial thing. In the state of New York, more black babies are aborted than are born.
I heard that.
Yes. June 24, 2022, the case before the Supreme Court ultimately that was overturned, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, that decision came down in June 24. How important, when you think about the issue of systemic racism and yet abortion that inordinately targets black communities, black children, single black mothers, it's as though that is never being addressed in the most obvious way.
Right, because it contradicts the left-wing mentality that we're out to protect you. They're out to take life away. The Roe v. Wade decision was the biggest civil rights decision for black Americans. Why? Because it's the preservation of life. The most famous decision in the last 50 years was a reversal of Roe v. Wade. And let me be very clear. It was constitutionally sound law and ruling on that. There is no right to have an abortion in the Constitution. That was something that was created 50 years ago. And it took 50 years to tear down that, in my opinion, wrong decision.
So you think about the fact that 60 plus million aborted.
And 40% of those are black babies.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And literally killing the future off, right? You imagine what could have been also. I think about the fact that there's so much poverty in the inner city, education historically low, dismal rates, COVID lockdowns sort of accelerated the decline of education in this country. Why is it so critical? And I think about education, families, children, the whole thing. Why is that so important to the future of freedom in this country, that children not only be born into this world, but have the opportunity to receive a quality education?
You've asked a great question. That's the one that I probably may not get through. I won't get through it. I'll have to change my approach to it. Parents, mom and dads are important. The reversal of Roe v. Wade hopefully will reestablish the family unit.
Yes.
But education is the key to break the poverty cycle.
Yeah.
I'm here today because my mom had an 8th grade education, my dad had an 11th grade education, and they stressed the importance of education. Mm-hmm. And it was critical. That's why I'm here right now speaking to you on this podcast. if you don't have an educational system in place that's going to help people of all different races, regardless of color, you're destined for a life of not enjoying the American dream. What prevents that? Let me say it in 2 words. Teacher unions. They don't care about people or students. They care about consolidating power and joining the left. You look at some of these union representatives, they don't have the focus of the young people at heart. During the 2 years when we were shut down, kids got shortchanged and they lost quality education. You can't get that 3rd grade or 4th grade year back. So we're talking about civil rights education, which in my opinion is the biggest civil rights issue. We need to eliminate teachers union. We need to focus on schools having a choice, a magic phrase, a choice, where kids and parents will say, I'm not going to that poor public school. I'm not going to that school that only focuses on the union. I'm going to go to a school that gives me and my son, my daughter, a chance to enjoy the American dream.
You know, I'm becoming increasingly aware. I'm a father, parent. I've got 3 kids. They're 11, 10, and 5. I'm becoming increasingly aware of the difference, and I've noticed it, between saying school choice, which I think is good, but is it good enough? Educational freedom seems to go further. It's really not about, some people say, well, if I choose this school versus this school, it's still government run. At the end of the day, you could pick one school over another school, and there's going to be differences. But is it really going to free our children from indoctrination and from the long reach of the NEA? I think it's something like 2 million members, but there's 3 million in K through 12, 3 million teachers in K through 12 education. Over 2 million of them are members of one union that has the lion's share.
We need 1 million Liberty University elementary schools, middle schools, and high school. We need private schools. We need religious schools. We need schools to compete with these public-run schools. They're a disaster. They are designed not to elevate the growth of young people. They're designed to promote a political motivation from the left. We need private, religious universities, middle schools, elementary schools to compete, to challenge, to give parents, families an opportunity to choose quality education versus a different school.
Yeah, absolutely. In the final thought here, and this is, I'm thinking again about this next generation. What are some challenges just from your experience, your lifetime of work? And I want to say this, I want to compliment you on something, because I think it takes tremendous courage. In 10 or 15 years ago, if people made a switch and they say, I identify with this political party or this particular political movement, and you kind of cross over, it might be over a tax issue, policy issue. The chasm today, the political divide, is probably greater than it's ever been. The stakes are higher than they've ever been. The costs of cancellation is the greatest it's ever been. I mean, you really can get hurt. Your career can be grounded forever. Your ability to go then get hired, rehired somewhere else for a job, all because of your affinity group or affiliation. If you choose to identify with the conservatives or throw in with conservatives or for freedom, you can be canceled for it. So I applaud the fact, I mean, you've done a lot. There's other heroes, but I see you as heroic in this moment because you've been so publicly outspoken. And it takes courage to do that.
No, I'm not a hero, no courage. If you love God and country, this is the easiest decision of my life. The easiest decision of my life is to put God and country first. Because all the other items you were referencing, party, that's not important to me. It is the love of God and the love of America. And when you look at the pledge and you say one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, I hope your students at Liberty put God and country first. If they do, every decision in their life will be easy.
How do we need each other? I wanted to end on that question. I agree with what you just said. And amen. But how is it that we need each other?
We got to start small. We got to start with a podcast. We got to start with another podcast, another podcast. We got to start communicating. We have to assume that everybody thinks differently, but we have to have the exchange of ideas. And we got to start with our young people. Our young people who are watching this, and older people, middle class, and whatever. We have to start having dialogue, and we have to make sure we get our priorities straight. God and country. How can you go wrong with those two? How can you go wrong? You start there and you move forward. But we start with conversation, and we make sure that we're not being told how to feel, how to think. That's my approach, and that's why I was so glad to be invited here.
Well, we're honored to have you. Thank you so much for joining the Give Me Liberty podcast. And folks, stick around for final thoughts. Hey, thank you for joining the Give Me Liberty podcast. What a great conversation we had with Leo Terrell. It was amazing to have him at Liberty University. What a treat that was. When you think about the future of education in this country, it is obvious that public education, taxpayer-funded education, is broken. Why? Not because of the students, but because of a failed system that relies so heavily upon union labor and special interests. At the end of the day, one of the largest teachers' unions in America, based right out of Washington, D.C., controls the lion's share of teachers and curriculum that is ultimately indoctrinating our students. And Leo draws light on that issue as well, and why it's so important that we do not only have educational choice in this country, but educational freedom. That is the key to the future of American freedom, and ultimately making sure that that freedom endures to the next generation. Until next time, God bless you.